What is the definition of counter pervasion in the proof that sound is impermanent with the signed product?
That sign ascertains the Barrett's cognition to be just non-existent in non-impermanent in accordance with the mode of statement for the disputed for whom it has become the third mode.
For whom it has become the third mode. Yeah.
Just non-existent.
Just non-existent where? Just non-existent, only non-existent. Same thing, I think. That's how he's saying, you know. In English, you can say just.
Just non-existent.
Or
in
only
the,
something.
In the discordant class, maybe just non-existent. The controversy is just non-existent in the discordant class.
In the proof that sound is impermanent.
Just non-existent in the non-impermanent.
In non-impermanent. Okay. Let's do the fundamental before this. Even Andres can answer because this morning he had his own thing. All of you. This is now the how do you get there? Like the, I think the important debate over here is how do you prove these two? So first, tell me one thing. Take the forward pervasion and the counter pervasion. It follows they are realized or they are known at the same time. They are known simultaneously. Naga. Take the forward pervasion and counter pervasion. It follows you know them simultaneously. Take the valid cognizer that knows that product exists only in the concordant class. It follows it knows that product doesn't, that product is just non-existent or only non-existent in the discordant class.
Just non-existent and only...
Same thing, let's say they're the same thing. Let's just say only non-existent to prevent any confusion. It follows it realizes it is only non-existent in the discordant class. Because they are both the object of one valid cognizer. Is the forward pervasion and the counter pervasion realized at the same time?
Yes.
So they both have to be the object of one valid cognizer.
Yes.
So if you realize that product exists only in impermanent, you have to realize that product doesn't exist, is only non-existent in non-impermanent.
Except.
Simultaneously.
Except.
This is what it is. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. Take a valid take an opponent for whom product has become the forward pervasion in the proof that sound is impermanent. It follows that they have to realize that product exists only in the concordant class. And it follows they have to realize that product doesn't exist in the discordant class. Correct? Right? Okay. It follows that this person has to realize that product is related to impermanent. Except? Except? Take someone for whom product has become the forward pervasion and the proof that sound is impermanent. It follows they have to know that product is related to impermanent. Kelsey, Andres, Paula. Agree? Venerable? All agreed? Agree? Take someone for whom product has become, this is actually important, all of you can do this. Hendrik is supposed to answer, but let's pretend he's not here. Take someone, I don't know if you're going to do this, but this is just learn this, this is important, because I don't know later when you will get time to do this. Okay? No. This is important just for anybody. When you do forward pervasion, we've already done this a little bit, but just do it again because today you were giving a nice answer. Take someone who realizes that, one sec, take someone for whom product is the forward provision in the proof that sound is impermanent. It follows they have to realize that product is related to impermanent. Accept? Take this person. It follows they have to realize that by the power of counteracting permanent, product is counteracted. By the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. You have to realize that. Take the person who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows that before they realize product is related to impermanent, they have to know that they have to know that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Before they realize that product is related to impermanent, before they realize product is related to impermanent, they have to realize that permanent is that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Agree? Agree? Because they have to know the definition before. Yes? Okay. Take someone who realizes that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Yeah? Agree? There is such a person? First question. Take this person. It follows that they realize that in that moment they're realizing the definition of product related to impermanent. Accept? Yes? It follows that they're realizing the definition on a basis of illustration. It follows the basis of illustration is something that is a product. Agree? It follows that on product or on something that is a product, you have to realize both the definiendum and the definition of product related to impermanent. Why don't you come here? I can't see you. Then I can give you tsars to your face. It's more fun. No, do they have to be realized on the same base? Do they have to be realized on the same base?
Accept.
Yes? Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows they have to realize the definiendum and the definition, both. They have to realize it on a basis of illustration. It follows that basis of illustration has to be something that is produced. Agree? Agree? Yes?
Why do we need to realize the definiendum on that basis of illustration? What if they just know the definition?
Someone who knows that product is related to impermanent, that's the definiendum. No, who knows that product is related to impermanent will know the definiendum because it is a definiendum, right? Right? Okay? Right? It follows that on something that is produced, you can realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Yes? Yes? It follows on something produced, you can realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Take the valid cognizer that realizes that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. It follows it realizes that permanent is pervaded by non-product or non-impermanent is pervaded by non-product. Yes? Yes? Because they realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. It follows that if you realize by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted, you don't have to realize that non-impermanent is pervaded by non-product. In that moment. It follows you do have to realize that non-impermanent is pervaded by non-product. Because you have to realize that non-impermanent is empty of product. It follows you don't have to realize that non-impermanent is empty of product. Follows you do have to realize that non-impermanent is pervaded by non-product. Because you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-impermanent and product.
I will say why.
It follows you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-impermanent and product, because you have to realize that if something is not impermanent, it cannot be a product.
Something is not impermanent, cannot be product, except
It follows you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-impermanent and product. It follows you have to realize that non-impermanent is pervaded by non-product. Because you realize that there is no common locus, Hendrik.
like the elephant in the room, right? There is no elephant in the room. That means that is becomes permanent, that there is no elephant in the room.
Huh? Elephant in the room has come from where?
Because I think we had this in Sarah's kind of, but if
You'll have to explain it to me. I wasn't in Sarah.
Must be
there is
absence of
absence of elephant in the room, it's like a permanent phenomenon.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying when you realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted, do you have to realize that whatever is not impermanent has to be non-product? Yes, no? Because you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-impermanent and product.
Is this after you realize the power of pervading?
I'm way before right now.
Way before.
I'm like, I don't know how many weeks before. For the dumb, I'm like years before. For the slightly wise, I'm months before. For the really bright, I'm like a few days before. This is a long drawn process. It's still before the forward pervasion. Yeah?
Because in the forward pervasion, you realize that product exists only in impermanent.
By someone for whom product has become the second mode in the proof that sound is impermanent. So it's all tied to one very specific thing. So for it to become the forward pervasion in the proof that sound is impermanent with the sign product, this person has to be thinking of subject sound, predicate impermanent, sign product, having gone through the concordant example. All that we're discussing now is all the prerequisite to getting there, right? Sound is not even it's not even part of what we've brought up so far. Yeah? So we're saying when you realize that product is related to impermanent, this is something that Gen really wanted to do this year. I think we have to figure out how to do it this year. The relation section, which is really hard. So when you realize that product is related to impermanent, do you have to first have realized that permanent and product don't have a common locus?
I don't think.
Permanent and
And permanent and product don't have a common locus.
I don't see how you could.
It follows you have to realize that permanent and product don't have a common locus because you have to realize that everything that is permanent is non-product.
No, why? Then, in order to realize that, you have to realize. That
Just
I'm
answer
saying
my
why, I'm saying
question.
why, you don't have to.
It follows that when you realize by the power of counteracting impermanent product is counteracted, you can still have a doubt that there is a common locus between permanent and product.
I have a doubt. Why?
It follows you can't have any more doubt.
No more doubt in consciousness.
It follows that the valid cognizer that is engaging in the power of counteracting impermanent has the power
No,
to
wait, you cannot doubt. You cannot doubt.
It follows there is someone who has realized that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted and still has a doubt that there is a common locus between impermanent and product.
Impermanent or permanent? Common locus.
Common locus between permanent and product. Sorry. Yeah, permanent. Huh? Answer.
Agree?
Take this person. It follows they have realized that everything that is not impermanent cannot be product.
Agree?
It follows that they have realized that product doesn't exist in any of the discordant classes.
Why?
It follows they have not realized that product doesn't exist in any of the discordant classes.
Agree?
It follows they have realized that product exists only in the concordant class.
Agree?
Follows that they have realized it doesn't exist in any of the discordant classes because they've realized that there has no common locus with the discordant classes. Take a valid cognizer that realizes that object of knowledge exists in the concordant class impermanent. It follows they cannot realize that it exists only in the concordant class.
Take someone who's realized that object of knowledge
Exists in the concordant class impermanent.
impermanent.
Impermanent. Like take sound, it follows it is impermanent because it is an object of knowledge. Yeah? It follows that you can realize that object of knowledge exists in the concordant class impermanent. Does it exist in the concordant class? Does it exist in the concordant class?
It exists in this garden.
Does it exist in the concordant? Why are you answering more than what I'm asking, my God? Does it exist in the concordant class? Does it exist only in the concordant class? Why? It follows that when you realize it exists in the concordant class, you don't have to realize that it exists only in the concordant class. Agree? When you realize that product exists only in the concordant class impermanent, it's more than realizing that product and impermanent have a common locus.
Agreed.
What is the more that you have to realize? That their product doesn't have a common locus with permanent? It follows to realize that product exists only in the concordant class, you have to realize that product and permanent don't have a common locus? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows before they realize that product is related to impermanent, they have to have had realized that non-impermanent is related to non-product. This is the problem. And what you were saying is the debate that comes, but you have to answer at least in the meantime. Okay?
Trying to answer.
Yeah, so try.
So say this again.
Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows that they have to have realized before that non-impermanent is related to non-product. Because they have to realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. So one debate is what is a relation, and that's a Duddha debate. Then there's a Tarig debate, which is a for perversion and counter perversion, which is what we were doing. Then there is a really tough debate about how do you go about knowing these relations. So, no, first don't ask me but, answer my question. Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows before they realize this, they have to realize that non-impermanent is related to non-product. Take someone who realizes that non-impermanent is related to non-product. It follows that before they realize this, they have to realize that by the power of counteracting product, impermanent is counteracted.
But you said non-impermanent.
4 answers first. First 4 answers.
Why?
Before they become
Take someone who realizes that non-impermanent is related to non-product. It follows before they realize this, they have to realize that by the power of counteracting product, impermanent is counteracted. Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows before they realize product is related to impermanent, they have to realize that product is related to impermanent. Because they have to realize that by the power of counteracting product, impermanent is counteracted. Before you realize pot, you have to realize pot. No. Before you realize product is related to impermanent, do you have to realize that the power of counteracting product counteracts impermanent? Before you realize product is related to impermanent.
This is mutually related.
I don't know, just answer my question. Huh? The problem over here is, and in fact I think there is a section in the first chapter right at the end which we don't do, which is like something like Tokpa Phenzun. I don't know if it's exactly this, but the problem that the non-Buddhists have over here, I think it's a Sankhya scholar to Dharma, I'm not sure. He says to Dharmakirti, he says, you'll never have a first moment of knowing. Because to know something, you have to eliminate another doubt. To eliminate that doubt, you have to know. So you're just going to go on circular forever. So this is the thing. If you realize product is related to impermanent, you have to know first that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. And when you know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, do you have to know that everything that is not impermanent has to be not product. Agree? Okay, let's go with agree. It follows you have to know that non-impermanent is related to non-product. Before. Yeah? It follows that you also have to know the definition of related to non-product. Follows you have to know before you realize that it is related to non-product, that it is different from non-product, and the power of counteracting product, it is counteracted. Which is the same thing as saying product is related to impermanent. So then you're like in a circular thing. What comes first? It doesn't make any sense. And if none of them come first, then you can never know the forward pervasion. If you cannot know the forward pervasion, the entire Buddhist enterprise collapses on its head. Take someone who realizes that product is related to impermanent. It follows have to realize that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product. Take someone who realizes that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. It follows they realize that there is no common locus between non-impermanent and product. It follows that they realize that non-impermanent is related to non-product.
How?
Four.
How do you
Four.
counteract the
Four.
positive phenomenon?
Four. First four. Stay with four. Huh? Yeah? Take the person who realizes, now this is your subject. Take this person who has realized that product is related to impermanent, and before that they have realized that non-impermanent is related to non-product. Yeah? They have realized that non-impermanent is related to non-product. There is such a person? Now take this person when they had realized that non-impermanent is related to non-product. At that moment. Yeah, that person. It follows that before they realized this, they had to realize the definition of non-impermanent related to non-product. What is the definition of non-impermanent related to non-product?
Yes. What is the definition? Is it related as same essence? Because they're not causally related.
Just answer my question.
Impermanent phenomenon.
Just answer my question.
For it to be
Is
different,
non-impermanent related to non-product?
It is different from that.
Non-impermanent is different from non-product.
Non-impermanent is different from non.
And by the power of counteracting non-impermanent, non-product, no, by the power of counteracting non-product, non-impermanent is counteracted?
1 second.
Yes or no?
Yes. Why?
What is the definition of being related to non-product?
Atisha,
Now answer the question first, please.
it is different from that and by the part of counteracting.
No, that's the definition of related in general. What's the definition of related to non-product?
Related to non-product. So it is different from non-product, and by the power of counteracting non-product, it is counteracted.
So take non-impermanent. It follows by the power of counteracting non-product, it is counteracted.
Agree. But how?
One sec, is it?
Yes.
It follows it fulfills the definition of being related to non-product. It follows it is related to non-product. To realize that it is related to non-product, you have to first realize that by the power of counteracting non-product, it is counteracted. Follows to realize that it is related to non-product, you have to first realize that product is only in the concordant class impermanent. It follows you have to realize before you realize that product is related to impermanent, and then so you're back to square one.
Can this be done also with take Shmuel? It follows he's human because he's a man.
Same thing. If you realize that man is related to human, it follows you have to earlier have realized that by the power of counteracting human, man is counteracted. It follows that before you realize that man is related to human, you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-human and man.
Oh, why?
It follows you have to realize that there is no common locus between non-human and man, because you have to realize that the power of counteracting human counteracts man. What no pervasion?
Just because, just because you have to realize
That counteracting human counteracts man doesn't mean you have to realize that there is no common locus between human and man.
you have to realize that follows. You have to realize that before.
No, I didn't say before. I didn't say before over here.
Previously.
No, I didn't say that. When you realize man is related to human,
Yes.
before that,
Yeah.
do you have to realize that the power of counteracting non-human counteracts, counteracting human counteracts man?
Why?
Because you have to realize the definition of being related to human.
But the definition does not say before.
To realize the definition, it follows you don't have to.
Really,
Got it?
Tarig.
That's what it is. So to realize the definition, you have to know the definition before, right?
Right.
On a basis of illustration. So first, the basis of illustration is also not clear. Remember this morning you were saying something else. Now even that's not very clear here. But there you can get there. You can get there. But my question is more, and that's why, okay, so the thing that I want you to write is, to realize the forward pervasion, you have already done this, I think all of you already have this quote. The quote you have. To realize the forward pervasion, you need 3 valid cognizers. Okay? And the 3 valid cognizers. So I'm giving it to you with sound is produced because it's, sound is impermanent because it's produced. Yeah? Which is, you have to realize that product is an illustration of the sign. Yeah? Basis of illustration, let's say that. Yeah? You remember this one? Of the sign.
This is to realize
The forward provision in the proof that sound is impermanent to the sign product. You remember this, no? What do you mean?
I think this was at the retreat last year because
Yeah.
I missed the probation business.
Oh, right.
To realize forward
provision.
provision, 3 valid.
Cognizers. The first one is you have to realize that product is an illustration of the sign. In Tibetan, this is Chepeta ki dami tabadupi Jesu dudo ki khabang epalas. Chamasum go ki dille maomigo. Andres, please do these things. You'll have so much fun. I'm telling you, you'll enjoy this so much. This is so much fun. Okay? So the first one of the 3 is you have to realize that product is a. Shmuel, do you understand now why I was saying the 3 modes are important?
I must admit that not very, that I do not understand one thing. So not really. I mean, partially.
Okay.
I did something, but there is still a part that is missing from me.
Okay, so then let's see if it happens, okay? So you need 3 valid cognizers to realize the forward pervasion. The first one is you have to realize that product is a illustration of the sign. You have to realize that impermanent, the predicate impermanent and the opposite of the predicate permanent are directly contradictory. Yeah? And the opposite of the predicate permanent. So the text says permanent, but I mean that's not so relevant right now. Are contradictory. Okay? Sorry, yes, directly contradictory. Yeah? And then the third one is you have to, this is really hard. You have to have the valid cognizer that refutes the sign in the discordant class. Yeah? This is before. So you were saying, is it during? This is all before. See how much has to go before?
But the first one, the 3 valid cognizers.
The first one is just basically you have to know that product is being given as a sign.
Product is an illustration of the sign, makes it seem like the sign is something.
No, illustration of the sign is a sign, no? When you give an illustration of pot, it has to be something that is pot. Correct? So if you're giving an illustration of the sign, then here basically it's saying you have to realize that here product is being cited as the sign in the proof that sound is impermanent.
So potent pillar is an illustration of potent pillar?
No, it's not, no, because it's an object of knowledge of which being it is not possible. So it doesn't have an illustration.
So then what if the sign in syllogism is a potent pillar, then the first condition?
Then potent pillar will be an illustration of the sign. That's okay.
But the sign is potent pillar. So when you
What is an illustration of the sign? Potent pillar. What's an illustration of potent pillar? Nothing. Like potent pillar is an illustration of object of knowledge, no?
right, but when we say what take bone of rabbit, it follows this potent pillar because it is pink, then
Because it is pink.
pink.
Okay.
So the sign will be pink.
Then
Yeah.
no, sorry, take bone of rabbit follows it is pink because it is potent pillar. Then with the first of the three recognizer is that
Potent pillar is an illustration of the sign.
but don't you have to replace the sign in this given syllogism?
No. Of the sign. It is, you have to know that this is what is being given as the proof.
Okay.
Okay? Then the second one,
Are there three similar ones then
for everything.
for the other counter-provisions?
No. Jesu jodo ki khyapa in Tibetan. Now this is in Tibetan this is for realizing the forward provision and the counter provision both. Sorry, okay? It's for both. Yeah? Okay? If that's the case, then what it's saying over here is before you realize that
Are you giving another?
no, I'm trying to wonder if I should do this debate right now. Leave it. Just do with the relation. When you to realize the forward provision in the proof that sound is impermanent with the sign product, do you have to know that product is related to impermanent before you realize the forward provision or when you know the forward provision? Before. Before, right? Yeah? So when you know it before, huh?
Why?
I don't know, they're saying why. Why? It follows you know it simultaneously? Okay. It follows that whenever you know it, doesn't really matter. It follows when you know it, but before you've known it, you have to know that permanent does not have product. Except? Except? So to know that product exists only in impermanent, do you have to know before that permanent doesn't exist in product?
Or product doesn't exist in product.
No, I'm saying it the other way around. That's why if you say that, it's still doable. I'm saying it the other way around. That's what the text says. When I realize that product doesn't exist in impermanent, do I have to have realized before that permanent doesn't have product?
Why?
Because you have to realize that, you have to know that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted.
No provision.
Take the valid cognizer that knows that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. It follows it doesn't know that. Now answer this one because you've been saying no provision so far. Now answer this one. It follows that you have to know that product and non-impermanent don't have a common locus, or that non-impermanent and product don't have a common locus. Do you have to know that? You don't have to know that? Take someone who has realized that product is related to impermanent. It follows that before that, they had realized that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. It follows that when they knew that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, they didn't know at the same time or before that non-impermanent is related to non-product.
Why?
It follows they had known simultaneously or before. It follows that when they realized non-impermanent is related to non-product, they knew that when they realized the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted, in that moment they knew that non-impermanent is related to non-product. It follows that before they knew that, they had known that non-product is related to non-impermanent.
Why?
Because they had, before that, yeah. Because they had known the definition of non-impermanent related to non-product. What is the definition of, what? They had known before that the definition of non-impermanent being related to non-product. Take someone who knows that non-impermanent is related to non-product. It follows before they know that they don't have to know the definition. Yeah. Take someone who knows that product is related to impermanent. It follows they don't have to know the definition before. Except? Who's saying except? It is a definiendum. Yeah. With what?
With not having to know
Fine.
this,
Okay, now you. Take someone who knows that product is related to impermanent. It follows before they have to know that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted. Take this person. It follows they realize that permanent and product don't have a common locus. I'm just going to say permanent instead of non-impermanent. Does that trouble you?
No,
Okay.
that's not the problem.
Okay. It follows that they know that permanent and product don't have a common locus. It follows they know that everything that is permanent cannot be product. Before. Do they?
Why?
It follows that when you realize that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, you don't have to know that everything that is permanent is non-product. Agree? It follows that when you realize that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, you don't have to know that on a impermanent basis, if that is counteracted, it cannot allow for product.
This you have to know.
You have to know that. Take a valid cognizer that realizes if something is not impermanent, it cannot be product. It follows that you don't have to remove doubt that there is no common locus between impermanent and product.
Why you have to do it?
There is no common locus between permanent and product, sorry.
You don't have to do it.
You don't have to know that. You don't have to know that. So take the valid cognizer that realizes that permanent doesn't allow for product. Okay? Agree? It follows that it only realizes that permanent is non-product.
Permanent is not product. No, it realizes other things also.
What else does it realize?
It realizes that permanent is. It realizes that permanent is not product.
That's
It also realizes becomes tricky with it constantly.
at the same time.
Yes.
You're stuck in that same one where to realize that product doesn't allow permanent is the same thing as realizing that product is related to impermanent, no?
It's all then.
Huh?
It's all then.
Take a valid cognizer that realizes that permanent is not product. It follows it has to realize that by the power of counteracting permanent, product is non-product is by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted.
If they know that permanent is
Take the
not
valid
product,
cognizer that realizes that permanent is non-product. It follows it has to know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product.
why?
For example.
The person that realizes that the relationship between permanent and product doesn't also have to think about the relationship between impermanent and product.
I'm not asking you that. I'm saying when someone realizes that permanent is not product, do they have to know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product?
Why?
You don't have to know that.
Okay.
What else do you need to know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product?
In order to know that if the counteracting permanent product is counteracted.
No, someone who knows that permanent is not produced, but doesn't know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product. What is left for them to know that?
You have to know that impermanent and product are always together.
Take someone who knows that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product. It follows you have to know that product is related to impermanent. It follows when you know the definition, you know the definiendum. It follows when you know the definition of related to impermanent, you have to know the definiendum of related to impermanent, because you have to, when you realize that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, you have to know that product is related to impermanent.
That's how it's agreed, no?
That's what he seems to be saying.
I might have said it, but it wasn't meant.
Okay, so when you realize that permanent is not produced, you're saying at the same time you don't have to realize that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product.
Yeah.
So what's the extra thing that's lacking? What more do you need to know to come to the understanding that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product?
That impermanent and product are always together.
Impermanent and product are always together. Impermanent and product are always together means you have to realize that impermanent is related to product.
Impermanent, yeah.
That means to realize that impermanent is related to product, you have to first know that the power of counteracting product counteracts impermanent.
Yeah.
So to know that the power of counteracting impermanent counteracts product, you have to know that the power of counteracting product counteracts impermanent.
Wait, what? No, why?
To realize that, to realize that impermanent counteracts product, you have to know that impermanent is related to product.
Yeah.
It follows you have to know before that the power of counteracting product counteracts impermanent. Because you have to know that impermanent is related to product. Yeah. What is the definition of impermanent related to product?
When did we switch from impermanent to
You switched. You made some strange twist. I don't know why you switched.
It wasn't my intention to switch the direction. It wasn't my intention to. I mean, saying that just because I can realize that everything that breathes, everything that breathes performs the function of breathing. I don't have to think about things that not breathe. Of course, I can realize that everything that breathes performs the function of breathing.
So you don't have to think about that. So that's perfect. So if it follows to realize that product is related to impermanent, you don't have to first think that if something is permanent, it can't be produced.
Yes.
It follows you don't have to realize that by the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted.
Why?
When you think of the power of counteracting impermanent, product is counteracted, do you have to think that something, if it is permanent, it can't be produced?
Why?
So what is the thinking behind if it is impermanent is counteracted, it can't be
I
produced?
just have this very childish view of impermanent product going hand in hand. So if you remove one, you remove the other. I don't have to think about what's left.
But what we're saying is, how do you get to that certainty?
By watching, by understanding the relationship between produced and impermanent.
But the relationship of produced and impermanent has a negative element, no? The definition isn't a negative.
What do I have to think about the negative?
So it follows it's not the definition.
What?
What is the definition? That I agree. Let's say I agree with you. This is still saying something else. Because the definition has a negative element in it.
How does it because of the definition related?
Yeah.
But I don't think why do I have to go I think it's the next step to go to permanent.
I'll tell you why. One sec. Is there a valid cognizer that realizes object of knowledge is permanent?
Okay.
Or let's go.
Okay. No, let's do that.
Okay? Let's do that one.
Yeah.
Is there a valid cognizer that realizes object of knowledge is permanent?
Yeah, do the teachers. Everybody else is confused.
Let's say, okay, well, let's go like this. Is there an object of knowledge that realizes that impermanent is a definiendum? Let's go like that. Okay? It follows that the same valid cognizer also can realize that impermanent is related to definiendum. No, right? It follows that realizing that impermanent is a definiendum doesn't have to realize that impermanent is related to definiendum. Take a valid cognizer that realizes that product is impermanent. It follows it doesn't have to realize that product is related to impermanent. So what is the extra that needs to be added? So there's a valid cognizer that sees impermanent is momentary. No, sorry, product is momentary. But that's not enough to know that it's related. What extra info has to be there? Don't say hold hand in hand. That doesn't make any sense.
I only had the childish pictures in my mind, so I can't answer in a better way.
So then try and do this.
It sits well with me.
I understand, but just understand this. So what the Dharmakirti is saying is, if you have to know that product is related to impermanent, you have to first be sure that if something is permanent, it cannot allow for being produced.
He says that.
By the power of counteracting impermanent product.
So then maybe the only thing that you need to know is that whatever is a product is impermanent.
My man.
And then you know.
I agree, but my question is, how do you know that? That's what we're checking.
How do you know that?
So you can say, you can know that product is produced. Is that enough to know that product is related to impermanent? No, right? So to know that product is related to impermanent, you also have to remove the doubt that there can be something that is both permanent and produced. Yes or no? Yeah? So that elimination of the doubt, does it happen when you realize that product is impermanent? Not enough. Correct? What more do you need to realize to know that product and permanent don't have a common locus? So that's the definition. That's the issue over here, okay?
But I don't see that the definition of related implies that you have to know.
So,
that
okay, one
that's
sec.
in
Let me say
impermanent.
one thing. Dharmakirti doesn't say that. I have to rephrase. He says, when you know that product is related to impermanent, he actually says something very nice. He says you have to know that merely being produced necessitates impermanence, which is produced doesn't allow for permanence.
This is also.
That you have to know. Because if you haven't removed doubts with respect to produced can allow for permanence or not produced is permanent.
No, of course.
Product doesn't allow for permanent.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how do you understand that product doesn't allow for permanent?
By understanding that impermanent and permanent are directly contradictory.
That's enough?
And by understanding that whatever is a product is.
That's what we're checking. How do you know that? That's exactly what we're checking.
If you know impermanent, how can you not relate it to permanent?
But they're not. No, I'm saying. So for you, it makes sense what they're saying, but then you will get stuck in the other one where to know that product is related to impermanent, you have to first remove doubt that permanent and product don't have anything in common, right?
Yeah, but if you relate impermanent and product, you definitely relate non-impermanent
And non-product. But then, does that happen simultaneously or before? If that happens before, then the same problem comes, which is then when you relate non-impermanent and non-product, to be able to do that, you have to first relate product and impermanent. So then you go there and then you went back. That's the issue with that thought. Both of these are not clear. Does that make sense? If to relate product to impermanent, you have to first relate non-impermanent to non-product. Then when you relate non-impermanent with non-product, you have to also relate product with impermanent. And then, so which one comes first?
What if
We're going to say.
before you relate product to impermanent, you have to realize that product is not permanent.
But when you realize product is impermanent, when you realize product is not permanent, you've not related. Fine. So before you relate product to permanent, you have to realize that product is not permanent.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Now, when you realize product is not permanent, is that sufficient to relate it to impermanent?
By realizing that product.
No, right?
No, one second. By realizing product is not
Permanent. Do you relate it to impermanent?
You realize that product is impermanent.
Right.
And then you realize that product is related to impermanent.
How? What's the
Because-
extra that you realize?
What's the extra that you realize?
You need something else, right? You're saying it's not sufficient.
I'm saying
because if
you
it
don't
was
need to.
permanent, it would not.
And normally that's what you say. I agree with you, but then the problem is, then to be able to say that, do you understand what the problem with your?
I
Yeah.
understand.
I totally agree with you. That's what the text also says. That's also what the text says, seems to say.
What does it say?
You can only say product is related to impermanent if you can be sure that permanent doesn't allow for production.
Correct.
Then you said what she's saying. So after you know that product is impermanent and you have ascertained or you are sure that permanence doesn't allow for production,
Yes.
then when you come back and realize that product is impermanent, you will know that it is related.
Correct.
Correct? But before you had to realize that permanent doesn't allow for production,
Yes.
At that point, do you realize that permanent is related to non-product?
Yes.
Do you have to therefore, to be sure that permanent is related to non-product, do you have to first be sure that product doesn't allow for permanence?
Yes.
So before you realize that permanent is related to non-product, do you have to realize before that product is related to impermanent?
Why?
Because you have to realize that product only allows for impermanence.
No. To realize that permanent is related to non-product, I have to be sure that
Product-
does not allow for permanence, or permanence does not allow for product. Either way.
Permanent being related to non-product is permanent not allowing for product. Yes?
Yes.
So to realize that, you have to first be sure that product cannot allow for permanence,
Yes.
which is the same thing as saying product is impermanent.
Yes.
So before realizing that permanent is not produced, you have to realize that product is impermanent.
Yes.
So then you've gone back to the first point.
Okay, so you could start out by saying, okay, product.
You could start off by doing this later maybe in debate. That would be really good, you can start out. Yeah?
We have no solution.
I don't know, I have my take on this. I honestly don't know. I'm not telling you my
It's not
take.
recorded.
No. No, I don't know. Like my take, I have my answer that I've come up with, but I've never defended it in debate, so I don't know.
You challenge?
No, yeah, no. Do it to someone else. Can we just quickly do yours now? Yeah? Yeah.